Everyone, John Doyle from OptixEQ. I'm going to look at the fifth race at Belmont today. It's a Grade 1 stakes on the turf. It's the Man of War. It's 11 furlongs, and I thought it was an interesting race for lots of different reasons. First, I'm going to look at the favorite, the number 2, Warren Point. And you can see I have the plot in front of us. I'll get back to the plot in a minute. You see this horse does not plot, so because he's run his races in the recent races, actually, have been in the Middle East. Before that, he was in Europe racing. And you can see just by the finish positions, this horse has been really effective at winning or placing in most of his races. But you got to notice that this is a horse that's been doing non-graded stakes in Europe. They never kind of promoted this horse into graded stakes until he got to the Middle East. And I just can't rate those races. It's hard for me to rate them. But obviously, they're not the caliber of the European racing. So the other thing I just want to note, especially for a favorite, if you kind of go down, this is where we added this maybe about a month ago now, the burst rate ratings and stuff like race rating and class rating. And you could just see that now this horse is 3-year-olds, so give it a little bit of a, leniency, but this horse's race ratings, races that he's been in, are well below what other horses in this race. They're more kind of Grade 1 in America, usually 121.5 plus, practically. And you can see this horse has been running in really light races. And, you start thinking about it. I mean, obviously, Dettori and Appleby are well respected, but like, why wasn't this horse running in graded stakes races in Europe? Why they ship them and then they ship them here? I mean, he's had enough races where they could have gave it a shot, at least at a Grade 3, Group 3 level. So I'm just dubious on this horse. Doesn't fit the typical profile. When we see horses, ship into New York and win, they usually have some graded stakes, even if it's, at lesser graded stakes races in Europe, which translate well here. But that's not the case with the 2 Warren Point. So I'm going to take a look against the Warren Point. I'm going to go back out here to the grid. Now, typically, if this race was a kind of a normal race, not a marathon turf race, I might be, and I still might be looking at early pace horses. It looks like the 3 on standard and 4 and 7 are horses that might have a early lead. The problem with them is the circles. Just concern, especially at the 7, is the finishability of these horses. So when you get to these marathon races, it just seems more that class kicks in, because basically what they do is they run around the pack. No one really separates, very rare, and they just kind of run around the track. And you look for the horses that can kick. And when you look at horses that can kick, you're looking at the squares, and the ones that, at least on both standard and surface and distance, that look good are the 1, 5, and 6. Okay, and when you look at the form of some of these others in here, we have Red Knight. We just got a bunch of horses that are maybe past their prime. Well, they are past their prime, but they still could, bounce a good race down there. Red Knight is 9 years old. You got Value Engineering is 7 years old. And I just think, there's just horses here that maybe when you look at the 5 and the 6, just might have a little bit more upside potential than those. And so I'm going to start with the 5, because I thought this was a little bit interesting. Howe Street just looked like a runner early on, galloped out huge and debuted second and made special like Aqueduct on the grass. Came back 286 days later to break, made him at Gulfstream. That's during the season, right? This is early this year. And then the race after that, and the first time versus winners, you can see the extended comment. It always asks you, when you look at notes, make sure you look at those eyes. Wide move on the turn and kicked into another gear in the stretch, has some ability, one to watch. So we kind of flagged this guy as a potential stakes kinds of horse. They put him in the Elkhorn, which is a tough race, Grade 2. And the horse kind of shows some early pace and kind of backs up. So I would say this is a horse that you might want to look at, maybe have some more upside versus some of the others, especially when you kind of look at the Elkhorn. I'm just going to filter on the Elkhorn, which was a race recently run at Keeneland. And let's see, it was on there's a lot of horses come out of this race. Okay. And you can see that 5 of the 8 entries come out of this race. So it's a kind of an important race. So we talked about the older horses. They both beat Howe Street. We talked about the 4, don't kind of like his plot. He might have peaked in that race. And then you have Value Engineering was the other one. And then you look at House Street. If you sorted this race by the odds, House Street comes to the top. So this horse was well bet in this race. And so I think you're going to get as kind of a flip now, just because of the performance. You know, that was maybe they saw this horse just doesn't have the caliber now. And I think you might get some better value. And when you're comparing like 5 of the horses in the race, out of the 8, and we made a case against the favorite, this horse kind of fits, right? So that kind of leaves me with, kind of another horse, because I talked about 7, and that's the 6. And the 6 I like how the 6 plots on both. Soldier Rising. Let's look at that one a little bit more carefully. Here's a horse that's capable, second. This is early in his career. Was second at Saratoga in a grade 1. Also showed in a grade 1. So this horse has class. There's no doubt about that. His form is the thing you want to kind of look at. So if you look at the form, it may not be as bad as it looks. Now the horse is coming off 162 layoff, but he's done that before and run well enough. If you look at his race 2 races back, he had traffic, lacked room in a grade 1, ran 4th in that race. Not a bad effort. I think it was completely against the flow, and it was against the bias that day in Aqueduct. So it was really hard to make up ground. I think as a horse, especially if they sit close, he's got a good strong kick. This horse, it looks like an alternative. He's another horse that's only 5 gelding. So there's still maybe some room, at least less likely to erode like some of these others, the 9-year-olds and the 8-year-olds in this race. So for me, I'm against the favorite, taking the 5 House Street out of the Elkhorn, which is a common race, and kind of looking at Soldier Rising as another play in here. 5 and 6 look like maybe potential value, but watch the board and enjoy the Man of War, which is a very interesting and tricky race. So that's it. Check us out on @OptixEQ on Twitter, and also our website, OptixEQ.com, for all our great products and information. Thanks for listening.